And Yaakov Katz is a senior columnist for the Jerusalem Post and the paper's former editor-in-chief. He's also the author of Shadow Strike: Inside Israel's Secret Mission to Eliminate Syrian Nuclear Power. And he joins me now from Jerusalem. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, Rosemary.
So, Israel's military says, says Hamas combat equipment has been found in Gaza's, excuse me, I do have to have a sip of water, excuse me. So equipment has been found in Gaza's Shifa hospital during a raid that's still underway. CNN cannot independently verify that claim, though, but no evidence has yet been found of a tunnel network under the hospital, despite Israel claiming Shifa was a Hamas command centre. Now, this doesn't amount to concrete evidence, does it, of a command centre? So when do we find out more about what is happening at that hospital, and what could this ultimately mean for the war?
Well, I think you're right. So far, we haven't seen the evidence of what the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, has claimed as there being this extensive tunnel network underneath Shifa hospital, and from which Hamas was commanding, controlling many of its forces. But let's keep in mind that yesterday, when the IDF started operating inside the compound, Shifa is a big hospital, right? You know, people need to think about it like kind of, you know, Memorial Sloan Kettering in New York, or HSS, Hospital for Special Surgery. These are big compounds, lots of several buildings. Israel went into one of those facilities. For example, near an MRI machine, it found AK-47s, grenades, and uniforms. It found other equipment in other parts of the intensive care unit. There are a lot of facilities and a lot of buildings. And I think we're going to see over the next day or so greater entry of the IDF into some of those facilities, and maybe we'll find more evidence. But what's important, I think, bigger picture, Rosemary, is that the IDF is sending a message to Hamas: nowhere are you immune, right? Hamas thought that they could hide in hospitals. They thought they could hide in schools. They thought they could hide in apartment buildings. What the IDF has been doing over the last few weeks is going into all of these different places and trying to smoke out those Hamas fighters and terrorists, kill and capture them, destroy the infrastructure, to be able to take down Hamas and prevent it from being able to carry out what Oren showed us in that horrific video just moments ago. And I want to talk about that a little later too. A possible deal is in the works to stop the fighting for a few days at least, to secure the release of some of the hostages being held by Hamas in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. What more are you learning about this as pressure builds inside Israel and abroad to do more to free the hostages? I mean, like you mentioned, the families of the hostages have been marching from Tel Aviv towards Jerusalem. They're supposed to arrive here on Saturday and have a sit-down protest in front of the prime minister's residence. There's a lot of public support, obviously, for their campaign. You know, 240 people. We heard the other day of a woman who gave birth in captivity. That means there's a baby just days old being held hostage by Hamas. We know of 10-month-old Kfir Bibas, a child who doesn't even speak yet, doesn't walk yet, who's being held hostage alongside 29 other children. This is heart-wrenching and heartbreaking. At the same time, though, it's difficult to make a deal, right? Hamas is not a trustworthy partner. They want not only the release of Palestinian security prisoners, in other words, terrorists that Israel has in jail, but they also want Israel to stop its operations for several days. Now, we all understand what that means, Rosemary. If you stop fighting for 4 days, 3 days, 5 days, that gives Hamas the ability to entrench itself, to rearm, to reposition its forces, and it makes your forces inside the Gaza Strip static. That is a threat to the continuation of this military operation, which is not yet over. Israel has only operated in northern Gaza. There's still southern Gaza, where there are 3 Hamas brigades, thousands more fighters, where probably the hostages are being held. We're not done with this operation yet, and that's what makes this so complicated.
I do want to get to the IDF releasing that GoPro video to CNN that was found on the dead body of one of the Hamas militants who took part in the October 7th attacks on Israel. And what this video reveals, as well as the horror, of course, of the actual attack, is a stunning security lapse on the part of Israel, with some of the militants clearly surprised themselves by the absence of any resistance to their deadly attack. What is the likely fallout from this clear intelligence and security failure on the part of Israel?
I mean, this is one of, like you said, one of the greatest failures probably in Israeli history, right? Not having any intelligence about thousands of people who are going to be breaking and breaching what are supposed to be your most secure and concrete defenses along that border, coming in without you knowing about it, passing those defensive measures, and then having free reign for hours until your forces are able to deploy. This is a horrific, not only massacre, but also debacle by the Israeli military and the political echelon. And this ties into what you said before, Rosemary, of Yair Lapid, the head of the opposition, calling on Prime Minister Netanyahu to step down. He will have to pay a price for this, right? There needs to be accountability when on your watch something of this magnitude happens. Unfortunately, what we've seen until now is while some of the security chiefs have said we take personal responsibility, we saw that with the chief of staff of the IDF, the head of military intelligence, the head of the Shin Bet security service, which is responsible for gathering intelligence on the Gaza Strip. They've all said we take personal responsibility. The prime minister has refused to do that. All he's willing to say until now is that there will be tough questions to ask after the war, and then I will answer them. But not now. And I think that that hurts to an extent some of the public trust. The public wants to see its leaders understand that there is personal accountability when such a failure of such magnitude takes place.
Yaakov Katz in Jerusalem, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And still to come.